Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukutali.
And a very good evening to you and welcome to Newsline Live. Today, of course, is a recording, and we're recording from our studios at Dawson Street in Colombo. And my guest today is a person who knows a thing or two about the stock exchange, about its regulation. He knows a thing or two about finance. And I thought it'd be appropriate to bring him on the program because, of course, we have a new SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission of Sri Lanka Act, and I'd like to ask him on behalf of the Republic what the issues and concerns are and how well this new act is likely to deliver upon these matters of good regulation, but whilst not dampening the market. And he's, of course, none other than Mr. Malik Cader, who is a former Director General at the SEC and, of course, a senior advisor at the Ministry of Finance in Sri Lanka. Very good evening to you, Malik Cader.
Good evening, Faraz. It's nice to be on the program once again.
Thank you. The new SEC Act. What are the issues and concerns? What about pumping and dumping? What about the criminal element and the civil element, the manipulations, the compounding, front runners and all sorts of things, prohibited conduct? The SEC, the stock exchange, is sort of full of potholes for the unsuspecting investor. And I want to know how well the new act has gone towards addressing this imbalance between seasoned veteran investors and the rest of the Republic. Because they keep saying, let's broad base our ownership of shares and so on and so forth. But is the share market a good option for the retail investor? And that's why we have this thing.
Right, you're talking about an unsophisticated investor.
Yeah.
Okay, for us, to begin with, well, this act is a timely act, right? We must say compliments to the policy makers for bringing this act at this hour, because for us, the act we had on the table was almost 35 years old. It came into effect in 1986. How markets functioned in 1986 and how markets function in 2021 are different. Okay. It is not just different, it's a lot more different. Right?
Okay.
Okay, so there's a lot of sophistication that has come into the market, obviously, with the globalization, with the internet and data security and all that kind of stuff. We have moved into a different level of markets, right? To accommodate the needs of such situations, I think this SEC Act is timely. It is timely,
okay,
because it will address the modernization process of the capital markets. Some of the key issues we had, for instance, regulation of the stock exchange. The old Act permitted the SEC of Sri Lanka to have only a stock exchange that is owned by members, right? Not a demutualized exchange. Now this Act permits a demutualized exchange or an exchange owned by shareholders. In addition to that, the Colombo Stock Exchange will also function, right, which is an exchange owned by members. And very soon, the Colombo Stock Exchange is also built to demutualize, to become an exchange that is owned by shareholders. Then there are a few more sophistication. I think I don't want to go into too much of technicalities, like the central depository system, the CCP, right? Those are things which are necessary, which never came under the ambit of regulation.
Right.
But now it's coming under the ambit of regulation.
Okay.
And there are some good governance principles as well.
Can you give me just one example of what it was and what it is now, and that therefore it's a good thing?
It's a good thing because it came under the umbrella of the Colombo Stock Exchange.
Which did? No.
The central counterparty system,
right.
And if the CCP came as well. But now it will be separate institutions, although owned by the stock exchange. It will come under the regulation of the SEC, and then the chief executive officer, the board members, the chief regulatory officer will have to comply with certain restrictions, and their appointment will have to be approved by the commission.
The appointment onto the board of a listed company.
Of the CEO. No, so we are talking about the exchange.
Okay, about the exchange.
Okay, you're coming into that. The next one is the issuance of securities, right? That is also a very important element here. We're talking about listed companies, right? And where listed companies are concerned. Under the new act, I think rules will have to be passed, but there will be a section that all board members of listed companies will have to comply with a fit and proper criteria, which is not there now.
Now, that's very interesting.
Right,
fit and proper.
Yes. Now. So rules will have to be brought what fit and proper is, but in general terms, fit and proper would be. I mean, there is what is called a general term, like you not that person has never been subject to any proceedings of a criminal nature, right? Never contributed to requirements of a standard or regulatory system. Right, those are. They'll have to basically.
What happens if these deviations, as under the new act, when one looks at it, these are certain standards. What happens to the people who have deviated from these new standards in the past who are yet on?
Okay. Now, for us, my understanding on the matter is on the 21st of September, this act came into effect. Okay, so this act will prevail now. So if there is a director of a company, right, if they've been appointed before the 21st, it doesn't matter, right? With the rules being promulgated by the SEC, they will have to sign an affidavit and file it with the company secretary. So there is work for the company secretary, and there is also awareness that is needed.
They'll have to write and file with some company secretaries exactly what then?
Yeah, so those are formalities which they will have to work the modalities. But the bottom line is directors of public listed companies will have to comply with the fit and proper criteria. The modality, right, is something
so
which needs to be
let me
decided.
ask you a direct question. If somebody has been a matter before the SEC that's taken them to task, let's say, and let's say that a matter has been compounded, then under this new act, will that person, having been compounded for an offence in the past, will that person be able to serve as a director in one of these listed companies?
For us, that is, there has to be a certain amount of judicial review in matters like that. But my understanding of the matter is that there has been some element of regulatory breach.
I see.
And that is why that basically the matter has been
compounded. Why do people get compounded? What is compounding?
Compounding means for us, in the good old days, the SEC Act permitted when there is a case been filed, right, in the magistrate courts, and when the case is prolonging, right, the accused,
you come to a deal basically,
has an option to go before the commission and say, I want this matter to be compounded.
Right.
And the SEC has the discretion either to accept it or reject it.
Normally, it's accepted in exchange for a fine.
It's a fine.
But not an admission of guilt.
Not an admission of guilt.
Right.
So it is a...
So can such a person who's had some matter compounded, can that person under the new act, can such a person be considered fit and proper to continue to hold high office in a listed company?
Right. Generally, if you ask me, no. So that is the test basically which we need to look at. But having said that, they have to file a declaration, right? It all depends on what the fit and proper criteria,
Yes.
which is going to be put out by, under the rules.
Right.
But the general rules, I mean, it'll run into a couple of pages, right? The SEC already has.
What is it? Okay, can we just move on? What is it that the new act will do specifically towards pumping and dumping and market manipulation? What specifically is envisaged under the new act?
For us, under the new act, the offences have been categorized differently, right? Under the old act, market manipulation was not in the main component of the act.
Right.
It came by way of rules. So there was actually, to me, there was a bit of a defect in having market manipulation in the rule and not in the principal act.
Okay.
Right? So now it has been brought into the principal act.
Okay.
Right?
How does that help you as a regulator?
As a regulator, it helps the regulation very well because it's in the principal act.
Yes, like
it cannot
how?
be. It cannot be
On the ground. How?
Yeah, on the ground for us to talk about the main market offences. Market offences have been split into two categories. One is prohibited conduct, right? For which there is one element called false trading and market rigging. False trading, creating a false market, right? False trading and market rigging. Then there is stock market manipulation, right? Creating a market that is not this thing. Making false or misleading statements. Now that's another thing, right? There are certain people who make false and misleading statements. Now we are in a high-tech era. It's very easy to disseminate information. There's what is called Twitter messages, Instagram, Facebook messages, WhatsApp groups, right?
So are you saying that this new act will take into account all these things?
It will take into account all these things, and people, I think investors need to be aware of these things. I don't think now even that fit and proper criteria for us, directors on listed companies will have to dress better for the occasion. You cannot be just being appointed because you know the major shareholder. No, that's not going to happen because it's a deathbed for directors just wanting to go and sit on the board and do nothing. No, there is much more responsibility that has been cast on the directors, and the directors will have to be aware. They for a while cannot say, look here, I didn't know. Most of the people say,
so this business about I don't know will not work.
It will not work. They have to be aware. If they are not aware, they will have to basically learn it from some angle. And I think it is an obligation of the regulator after this act came into effect to see that there are awareness programs that have been created for these people to get geared, right, for the current regulation.
Well, that's good news. But what is the good point about this act? Is there one specific thing you can say, well, look, this is very good?
Yeah, the offences which have been...
That's a good part.
That's a good part because the offences... And one of the other things, well, while talking about the good part of it, these offences I just mentioned to you, the 5 market offences and insider dealing, those are the principal offences under this act.
Right.
Those are not compoundable.
Previously, in discussions with various people previously, the officials at the SEC sort of disclosed that the test for a successful prosecution in this before this new act, in the old act, was a test of criminality, which is beyond reasonable doubt.
Yes.
Now, a lot of times the SEC have said, well, we can't do anything more because the test is of a criminal nature, beyond reasonable doubt. But under this new act, they have brought in the element of civil action, where the test is not
it's a balance of probability.
It is a balance of probabilities. Is that specifically, is this a good act? Is this a good item? Will it help swifter prosecution?
What happens is, when you bring the civil action against a person, you can only recover damages. Right? You will recover damages. For instance, if there's a 100 million damage which can be proved, right? You can recover those damages. But the criminality, you're teaching him a lesson, right? The criminality. It's very difficult for one to, I don't know how one would say that it's difficult to prove, right, anything beyond reasonable doubt, because a proper prosecution is being done or proper investigation is done, you could take people to task. It's not difficult, right? For us, now you have a lot of sophisticated machinery that is available in surveillance. In some countries, when someone buys, you know what the connection is. You get it all electronically, right? So it's very much more easy in this environment to find out a scheme.
Yeah.
Right.
But our governor of the central bank back in 2015, Arjuna Mahendran, didn't even have cameras in the dealing room.
Yeah, but he should have had. He should have had.
But don't you think it's absolutely criminal that in this day and age, it's almost like telling us that the Bandaranaike airport is bereft of security, which we all know, or we all hope that it is not, but because they have security. So I don't want to delve too much about these unsavory and sort of traitorous elements of society. But when we come back, we will talk about what positivity we can expect from the new SEC Act. We'll take a look at the headlines and come back and see you on the other side of the break.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And welcome back to Newsline Live, and I'm in conversation with Mr. Malik Cader, former Director General at the SEC and Senior Advisor at the time with the Ministry of Finance. Now then, Mr. Cader, talking about the new SEC Act, and if we look at the good governance aspect of it, because Sri Lanka seems to have a problem with good governance, really. How well does the new SEC Act go in towards addressing that?
For us, it actually enhances governance. Some feel that they have gone beyond the ambit of governance, right?
Yeah.
But it's good to have right controls in governance. There is one element in this new act which has been brought in, obligation and the duties of an auditor. It has been enhanced. For instance, if an auditor in his normal course of duties as of officer, right, as an auditor, discovers any irregularity, right, he can report it to the audit committee, and if the audit committee takes no notice, he can report it to the board of directors. And if the board of directors don't take notice, he has an obligation to report this matter to the regulator and the exchange.
So those options are there.
So those options are to protect the investors.
And the same would apply to when the SEC decides to prosecute somebody.
Yes.
Because they can either decide to prosecute that person having acted contrary to common law or so on, or they can now, instead of going the criminal route, they can rely on the civil side of it.
To recover damages.
Yes, so where the balance of the probabilities,
yeah,
as opposed to absolutely beyond any reasonable doubt.
Yes.
Now then, having said all that, what steps in this new act are there to control pumping and dumping and to ensure that retail investors, or the so-called unsophisticated investors, from getting hit?
For us, one of the things, you're talking about unsophisticated investors, being a regulator, My understanding on the matter where an unsophisticated investor is concerned is that in 1993 they bought this concept of unit trust, right? The whole concept about unit trust was to attract the unsophisticated investor to the market. For us, you need to have sophistication to go into the market to buy and sell securities. You need to have technicalities. You need to have technical know-how. Because for us, if someone is to say that the market is not risky, that is wrong. The market is risky. Every day. So you need to understand the risk, right, and find modalities how to get out of this, get over these risks. So that is why if you ask me, if there is someone who wants to come into the market with 10 billion rupees, I'll be very nervous for the first time, right? Because he has to get sophistication. That's why he needs to go through the route of the unit trust, which has inbuilt protection for this so-called unsophisticated investor. So education is key. Education is key for someone before coming into the market.
Now, under this new act, what have they done towards similar things that you and Indrani Sugadadasa did in terms of controlling runaway prices, for example? Even recently we had huge gains in certain stocks on the stock market for no apparent reason.
Yeah, so for us...
Under the new act, how does it...
Yeah, so I mean, it doesn't... Those are market mechanisms. The principles of the act still remain the same.
Would I be wrong in saying to you that they've just ignored that whole matter?
The thing is, with prices moving up, one needs to find out actually why the prices are moving up, right? Prices move up because of demand and supply. Our market for us is a very tiny market. You're talking about, I know you're talking about the current boom, so-called boom in the market.
Yes.
There are loads of people out there who are flushed with money. For us?
Yes.
There are loads of people who are flushed with money.
Yes, I've heard
with a 5% interest with the banks give, it's not enough.
No,
so here we find a group of people who have come into the market and they are trading. So the demand supply is going beyond the ambit of fundamentals.
Yes, but this sounds as a sort of an excuse for people who come in here and onto the market and who pump the market up, the prices up, and then taking advantage currently,
so
because people, like you say, there's a lot of money available for investment.
Yeah, so for us, that's something which I think the regulators will have to investigate. Regulators, I think I saw some notices somewhere that their investigations have begun. So you need to see whether there are market manipulative methods used by these so-called traders to take the market artificially up. Now that is something with the regulator will have to accelerate the action.
Is there any provision like you all did, Mrs. Sugadasa and yourself?
Yeah.
About the handbrakes?
Yeah. You don't need provisions in the act for that. You don't need provisions, special provisions.
Then where do you need those provisions?
Yeah, those provisions are simply directions which the SEC can issue, and those directions are there to be issued. It all depends whether one would want to do that. And some of the directions we have issued on particularly credit is working very well now. The market is healthy. You're looking at a credit point of view, a financial point of view. The market is healthy because those things we implemented in 2011. Right. One of the things I think which someone will not want to do now is to have the handbrakes. Right. It's good. It's a good and bad things also on the handbrakes.
What's bad about the handbrake?
Well, prices move. We basically in 2011 when the prices went 10% beyond, right? Because we felt genuinely, rather than going behind market manipulation, right? Market correction is necessary. We did it for a while. We were criticized severely, but markets reacted very well, right? Markets reacted very well, and then things were quite normal. The question is whether the market cap at 9,500 right now, whether that is realistic or not.
Is it too high?
We don't know. Some analysts will have to basically come out and say this market capitalization is good or bad.
We're talking about the new SEC, and I'd like to remind the Republic that investment in the stock market can see your investment go down, and of course it can also go up. You need to be aware of that. And isn't that true? You shouldn't be investing money that you can't afford to lose on the stock market.
Yes, you need to invest money which you can afford to keep aside, right? Not keep aside, I mean, not money which you need for your medicine, for your education and things. So if you have money which you can keep for long-term investment, then right, that's the money that needs to come into the market.
Thank you.
Yeah, and also there is a category of traders who wants to trade in the market and make money instantly, day trading, all that kind of stuff. Well, those are high risk.
So you have all the risks, really?
Yes, there is the market.
Low risk, high risk, and mid risk, all the risks.
No, the market is generally risky. If someone says, let's take the risk out of the market, that market is not capital markets, right? That market is a fixed income market, right?
What?
So we need to manage the risk. That is why we have all these professionals.
Whilst you were saying that, Mr. Cader, I was just thinking about it. The entire world uses use of organic fertilizer. It's 1.6%, but then in Sri Lanka we're trying to do it literally overnight into a 100% organic state. Well, you know, good luck to all that. But I just mentioned that because you said this. But Malik Cader, thank you very much for your expertise. Always great to have you on the program. And that's the way it was on Newsline Live today. Take care, have a great evening, and as always, God bless you.